Greetings. It is Monday, June the 29th, in the infamous and tragic year of 2026. I'm Thomas Caldwell of the Aurelian Column, and this is the Monday Morning Report. Well, it's war again. War with Iran, at least. I told you guys that agreement didn't really mean very much because it was, written by someone that likes to get out of things. Ships are being hit by the Islamic Republic's IRGC. Donald Trump is saying this morning, though, that the Iranians want to talk again. But one of the things that was most bizarre over this ongoing turmoil that is affecting global commerce, affecting the Straits of Hormuz, is nuclear weapons. Over the weekend, there were reports in various locations, mostly the alternative media, quoting what is being described as a news source tied to the IRGC, saying that Iran has no choice but to obtain nuclear weapons. And that was playing out as if Armageddon itself was about to start. Just because somebody wants nuclear weapons doesn't mean they can easily get them. This whole thing is supposed to be about that. I mean, if somebody wants to nuke, does it mean you can just go down and pick it up at a Home Depot or something like that? No. The message that came out, if anything, shows exactly how disunited the Islamic Republic of Iran currently is and how insane they actually are, because Trump gave them a pretty big deal. I mean, they turned down a potential of $300 billion. Iran's being run by, if you can call it being run, by insane religious fanatics that want to die. You can't negotiate with that. Now, where are they going to get a nuclear weapon? The reality is that's just people making hay out of drama. It shows that if they had the chance, they would get it and they would use it. I mean, who wouldn't want a nuclear weapon if you're a country bent on world conquest and bringing your form of religion to other people at gunpoint or missile point? Look, that whole situation is only going to be resolved in one way. And that is if the Islamic Republic of Iran, the government of Iran, is gone. It's what the Israelis want, and it's what the Americans want, although they don't really like to admit it. And it's also what just about everyone in the Middle East wants at this point. Iran lost this when they started launching weapons, drones, and missiles on their neighbors. And that just demonstrated exactly how much of a liability they are to human existence. So let's just follow this thing. I don't think you can cut a deal with these people, and Donald Trump has demonstrated that to the world. They can't be negotiated with. They can't have agreements, although this morning he's saying that they want to talk. This is going to be an interesting story when the dust is all settled, when everything is over, and we can then examine things that went on behind the scenes, because if anything, this war is behind the scenes. Stay tuned. Back to the Western Hemisphere, Venezuela had a massive earthquake, and this is a big one. About 1,500 people confirmed dead so far as of this morning. The worst earthquake that country has experienced since 1900. That death toll could set records, and it can go perhaps as high as 10,000, according to some estimates right now. Many tens of thousands of people are still missing, but quite honestly, that could just be that they're not accounted for. They're trying to dig people out. A lot of miracle stories there. Isn't it interesting how humanity can get its act together when it needs to, usually with a major natural disaster? Most people have never experienced a major earthquake or its aftermath. I was in Kobe, Japan in 1995, and I can assure you that it's the closest you ever want to come to a post-apocalypse world. If you're in a major metropolitan area, the dust, the smell of death, fires, it's just hell on earth. And quite a few people die of shock, not from being hit by debris or glass or furniture that bounces around their home, but shock because your entire world has quite literally been taken away from you. Dealing with and preparing for natural disasters is something we Americans and the rest of the world, for that matter, should be a lot more focused on than we actually are. I don't think California is ready for what will eventually happen out there, which will be a massive calamity of the kind you see in Venezuela. That will be awful because Californians, although they take some precautions, they're not ready for what's coming. Because when your whole world has been turned to powder and dust, you better have backup. You better have people there that will come to your aid because there's nothing for it. In Virginia, the Commonwealth of Virginia, the oldest state in the Western Hemisphere, Virginia has held back tyranny at least a little bit for now. A last-minute court decision in the Commonwealth will prevent the so-called assault weapons ban from taking effect on July 1st. Lots of political maneuvering is going on. Some people are predicting that the governor is surrendering, but Virginia's governess, well, she may not be through yet. This is something to watch closely, as the way this fight goes in Virginia will probably be how it will go in the rest of the country. The right to bear arms, because, well, if you don't, you're going to turn out like Europe. Given how important Virginia was during the American Revolution and our first Civil War, it won't be much of a surprise that any future rebellion will also be fought on this ancient soil. And speaking of rebellion and fighting insanity and tyranny, a fire was ignited over the last couple of weeks that came to a roaring inferno over the last few days. A low-budget movie, Citizen Vigilante, a film by German filmmaker Uwe Boll and starring American actor Armie Hammer. It is currently the biggest thing on the internet. Not in mainstream media, but on the internet, everybody's talking about it, and people are seeing it. Germany, of course, has banned it, as has the United Kingdom, because, well, it tells the truth. And those are two countries that don't like the truth about how they've allowed millions of invaders into their midst who are murdering, raping, killing, torturing, feeding off of the government teat, all sorts of nastiness. They can't have that, can they? Now, Elon Musk posted it for free for 2 days up on X, his social media platform, which is where I saw it. And kudos to him, because that has resulted in a lot of the people in Europe that the governments there didn't want to see it, seeing it. It's now available for paid streaming on Amazon, Apple, YouTube, which I found kind of interesting, since they tend to be the biggest censors out there. And it's probably available other places. I'm told that DVDs will also be made available at some point in the near future. Now, one of the reasons the powers that be did not want this film in theaters is very important and very telling, and also an indication of how powerful people can be. They didn't want people standing up and applauding in groups to murderers and rapists being killed by a white man with a gun, because that's what you see in the movie quite a bit. They didn't want people congregating who would give a standing round of applause, most likely, at the end of the movie. And audiences did this in the 1970s with Dirty Harry and Death Wish. Those were two big vengeance movies back in the day that a lot of people enjoyed because our crime rate had gone through the ceiling. But they didn't want people in theaters because after the movie's over, people are going to go out to the lobby and congregate. They're going to go out to the street and talk to each other, people that they've never met. They're going to talk about all the problems in Europe with the invasion, with the bloodthirsty monsters that the governments there have allowed into their midst to make their lives a living hell in some places, and then go off and have a drink, exchange phone numbers and email addresses, arrange to talk somewhere else. You see what I mean? They can't have us congregating. That's one thing tyrannies don't like. People meeting together face to face, talking about something that's affecting them, and trying to come up with a way to stop it. You see where this is going? Now, of course, they'll be happy to let people watch it by themselves in their living room and get angry at the screen. But crowd mentality, people getting together and being very angry about something, kind of like something you saw back in Washington, D.C. on January 6th, when what I think was 1 million people showed up because they were angry that the election had gone the way it went. That terrified the powers that be. On Lobby Day in 2020 in Richmond, an estimated 150,000 people from around the United States showed up, not just in downtown but in the surrounding area, heavily armed to protest government trying to take away the right to bear arms. That terrified the establishment. And this movie is terrifying the establishment as well. Now, it's not a great movie by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not going to be a movie critic on this one. It's worth seeing, though. It's not well done, but it doesn't really matter because it's not anything new to those of us who have been following this, who've been watching what's going on. We haven't ignored it. We've looked at it with horror. But what I think this movie could be is the Uncle Tom's Cabin of our time. Now, for those of you who don't know, I'm referring to the classic novel by the author Harriet Beecher Stowe, depicting the horrors of slavery in the United States. And it was published in 1852. And that novel became an international bestseller. It was hated in the South. It was supposedly exaggerating certain things. It set off a political and social firestorm over the question of slavery. Less than 10 years after that book came out, the United States tore itself apart in a civil war that took the lives of 2% of our population. That would be about 7 million people today. Can you imagine 7 million Americans dying in a civil war today? One could hope that's not going to happen. One could pray that that's not going to happen, but proportionally it happened before. And what we're facing now arguably could be a lot worse. And I believe this movie, Citizen Vigilante, is just the beginning. It's a fuse that's been lit. Even though it's about nothing surprising to those of us who are following the death of Europe, especially the United Kingdom. News this morning of a 2-year-old girl, yes, a 2-year-old girl, who was gang raped and murdered by what is insanely being called refugees. The longer this woke, leftist, liberal insanity continues, the more horrifying the backlash will be once it begins. And let me leave you with this. If there's one thing to describe leftism, as we call it, wokeism, all this stuff about different genders, fanatical feminists, if there's anything that can be pointed out is that those people are living in a fantasy world. They don't understand cause and effect, and they don't understand human cause and effect. You can push human beings only so far, and some ethnic groups, mostly those of European extraction, tend to be a lot more patient than others and put up with an awful lot more, much to our detriment. But when the final straw breaks the camel's back, pun please excuse, the backlash, the bloodlust, the fighting, the violence is going to be unbelievable. And if you know anything about history, about peoples, when you push them and push them and push them and push them, it's like pulling a rubber band back until it's about to break. And then when it's released, boy, does it hurt. I don't know if we can avoid conflict at this point. I would like to think we could. But people are just pushing us and pushing us and pushing us. And by people, I mean the leftist intellectuals, whatever you want to call them, that think they know better, and in reality, they know nothing. This movie has gotten people the excuse to put on the table that European civilization and culture, including here in the United States, is under attack. Our women and our children are being butchered. The woke government, whether they're possessed by extraterrestrials or very strange parasites, I don't know or care, have basically put a gun to the head of everything we are and have been for thousands of years. There's going to be no choice but to fight back. And unless they suddenly wise up, and I like to think that's possible, there's eventually going to be something much more incendiary that's going to occur. And when that happens, it's going to lead to an explosion that's going to be, well, something they'll be talking about in the history books many, many years from now. And they're going to be asking themselves why they didn't stop it when they had the chance. That's it for today. If you appreciate my work, please like, subscribe, and share. Share with your friends and share with your enemies. And enemies exist. Just get ready for it if there's going to be a fight. I can be reached at feedback@aureliancolumn.com. That's feedback@aureliancolumn.com. I'm up on X. My handle there is MICCAMPEN. That's MICCAMPEN. I am up on Instagram. I'm up on Minds. I'm up on MeWe and a few other places, but not Facebook. Never Facebook. Please be so kind as to consider a paid subscription or a donation for new equipment and such things. It keeps the lights on literally, figuratively, and the gas tank reasonably full. This podcast originates at Substack. My handle there is aureliancolumn.substack.com. Until we meet again, be good, be safe, be vigilant, and remember, Clown World, the deep state, and artificial intelligence must be destroyed. And remember, Virginians, sic semper tyrannis. Good day.